Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, mate. Good to be here. Good to have you here.
Well, yeah, thank you for inviting me to your house, actually, in this beautiful setting with the fire going as well.
We lit a fire, especially for the podcast, yeah.
I think it's right up there so far of my very few podcasts that I've done as the most comfortable setting, at least, that I've done one in so
You're
far.
most welcome.
So, Peter, best known in the car world for your YouTube channel, PetrolPed, approaching 200,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
And having uploaded that impresses me, but having uploaded over 1,200 videos.
That's the bit that scares me, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those numbers that just happens, and I think when you do milestones, I remember hitting 100 videos. When I hit my 100th video, I did with a local Aston Martin dealership. I did like a Q&A, and I thought, wow, 100 videos, that's unbelievable. And then suddenly you hit 1,000. And I think if you look at some YouTube channels will have got bigger growth with far fewer videos, but I've always pumped out right from the get-go. I did a video a week. When I first started, I thought I'll do a video every Friday at 6 o'clock. Yeah. And then after a couple of years and the channel was growing, I thought, well, maybe I'll add Wednesday as like a little update video, which I still do, called a Midweek 180. And then shortly after that, I added Monday. So I do 3 videos a week. So that doesn't take too long before you suddenly find you're over 1,000 videos.
Just to get some quick context, could you just briefly describe what your channel is?
I am a car guy. I love cars, so my channel is predominantly cars. I live very close to Goodwood Motor Circuit, and there's always something going on up there. So when I started, I didn't intend to be a car reviewing channel as such. Although I do review cars, but I do events, a little bit of motorsport. And then I guess one of the reasons you're here is, we've lost one of the dogs already, look, I just love my bikes. I love cycling. And there's a real overlap, a real crossover between people who have nice cars very often are into cycling.
Yeah.
And therefore I do some cycling content as well.
Well, I noticed that. So you had was it Cycle Sunday regular feature?
Yeah.
So have you just sort of parked that for now?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. So that came around, and it's a really great example of one of those things you do where you end up making a really, really good friend. So Paul, who I did Cycle Sunday with, come on then, up you get. She's just wanted to be involved. So Paul, who I do Cycle Sunday with. So when we were in lockdown, I, in my infinite stupidity, in hindsight anyway, we weren't allowed to leave the house. We weren't allowed to drive. And here I am as an automotive YouTuber, and I announced I was going to do a video every day during lockdown. I called it the COVID-19 daily vlog. I was quite proud of that name.
For how long did you do that for?
I thought lockdown was going to last about 2 weeks, like most people, right? So I did it for 10 weeks. So I did a video a day for 10 weeks, which again, that's 1,000 videos plus. That a big chunk of that was 10 weeks of video every day.
Wow.
So when I was doing that, it was what am I going to film? And one of the ideas I had, or one of the videos I did, was I got my bikes out and did a video on my 2 road bikes. My road bike and my mountain bike. And in that video, I said I've got a Specialized Venge road bike, and I'd always wanted to have a bike custom made for me. I had that one fitted, so I bought a standard bike and then went through a fit process where they changed things like the stem and a few other things, made sure the saddle was in the right position, made sure the saddle height was correct, but it wasn't really a custom fit. Anyway, one of the guys, one of my followers, messaged me and said, I've got a bike shop. I'd love to do a collaboration and we'll fit you a bike. We'll custom build a bike. I went, that's amazing. Where's your bike shop? He went, Edinburgh. Right, now I live in Chichester. I don't think you could get physically much further apart.
Yeah.
But we talked over a good few weeks and we decided we'd do some videos around fitting this road bike. And I wanted to put it on the main channel rather than set up a separate channel, because starting a new YouTube channel is it's so difficult to get traction, so difficult to grow.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah. But also, I'm a car channel, so I was a bit wary about how that was going to sit, not just with my audience, but with the algorithm as well. So I did a series called Cycle Sunday. We made about 6 or 8 videos on the build of this. It was a Bianchi Ultra XR4 road bike, and the idea was that we'd talk about the choosing of the bike. We'd go through the fit process. We'd go through a video about selecting all the different components. So we did a video on the wheels and tyre set that we use. We did a video on the group set we were going to use. We did a video on, it sounds like a really small, but shoes, cleats and pedals, what we were going to use. And then because the videos were only like 20 minutes long, we thought, well, we'd do a podcast to support each episode. And that's my first foray into the world of podcasting, because you've got an hour of a podcast that you can deep dive into stuff in a way you can't do on a YouTube video. And we did that, and it was again initially around that bike build. But as part of that, you know what it's like when you go into a bike shop, right? You end up wanting other bikes. So we were always talking about the Ultra road bike, but we did a video on gravel bikes, and then at the time he had some really cool e-bikes in there, and I'd never ridden an e-bike. Yeah. And I think like a lot of people had misconceptions about what e-bikes were. And then I remember it was a very expensive test ride. He went, well, get on that and just ride round the car park. So we got on an e-bike, rode it around the car park, and went, I've got to have one of those. That's amazing. So I ended up buying my wife an e-bike. And that was one of the best things. I'm sure we'll talk about it during the podcast, actually, because the thing that's done is my wife and I can now go out on a bikes together. I'm normally on my gravel bike, actually, and she's on her e-bike. And we go out riding together, and it kind of evens out the not necessarily fitness, but just the ability, and we just have a nicer time. Don't end up arguing when we get to the bottom of a big hill.
That story you've just told, you can tell that time and time again, and it's so common that's the way that people get into e-bikes.
Yeah, and they look cool. And we ended up then. I ended up buying a full suspension e-bike, a Trek Rail 9.5. And when we did the second set of Cycle Sunday videos, because we had a problem with the first lot, is that because of lockdown and the supply problems in the cycle industry, we spec'd the bike, we ordered all the bits, and this is in January of 2021. And the plan was to have all the bits and build the bike in the April of 2021. And then we were going to go, because it was an Italian bike, we worked with Bianchi and we worked with Campagnolo. We were going to go to the Bianchi factory. We were going to go to Campagnolo factory. The last bit of the group set didn't arrive till September. So we had to kind of park Cycle Sunday. Then we went back and did another series where we built the bike. But then I collected my Trek Rail. We did some customization on that. We put different wheels on it.
What made you choose the Trek Rail?
The bike shop. I've got a dog being very demanding. Sorry. So the bike shop was called Criterium Cycles. They were a very big Trek dealer. Trek and Bianchi were their two big brands. And then in terms of the rail, I wanted a full suspension bike, and Paul just kind of said that for my requirements, it was the perfect bike, really. Yeah. And it is, because I got the 9.5 because that's the entry level carbon frame, so the carbon frame with the entry level group set.
Yeah.
Because the plan was always to change out a few things, so we put the SRAM wireless, Axis, the wireless shifters on it, and we put carbon wheels on it. We changed the rotors, just to make it a little bit more trick. But I'm not a good enough rider to go for the full blown, top spec group set and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm a roadie that every now and again does mountain biking.
Have you been anywhere special on your Trek Rail?
Just around here, really. There's where we are right now. Out the back of the house is the South Downs. You can literally go out the back of the garden, across a farm, and then you're on trails. And so I just explore there, really. I think the biggest challenge I've got with it, and it is just transporting an e-bike is much more tricky than a road bike, especially because of the weight. Although I've got a tow bar mounted bike carrier, at the moment I don't have I have a press car at the moment that has a tow bar, but my bike carrier isn't an e-bike bike carrier, so it's not rated for the weight.
Yes.
You can't put an e-bike on the roof of most cars, so it's a little bit more tricky to transport them around, unless you've got a lovely van like you have, of course.
Yeah, you're right though. The size of an e-bike, or size of a mountain bike, when you compare it to a road bike, many people underestimate the length of the front end. When you've got a good length, sort of 180 mil travel fork, plus some really wide handlebars, it's just, most cars are just not suitable for transporting mountain bikes.
Yeah, I mean, when I do my car reviews, especially if it's like an estate or an SUV or something, one of the things is the two things I'm known for is, can I get 2 dogs in the boot? Well, as you can see,
you've made it easier for the car manufacturers, to be honest.
That's not too difficult. But can I get my bike in the boot? Well, to get a road bike in the boot, or a gravel bike, because I love my gravel bike as well. I ended up getting 3 bikes from Cycle Sunday, by the way, but we'll go back to that one, I'm sure. Is relatively straightforward. You know, most cars you might have to take one of the wheels off, but an estate car you can normally get you can get a road bike in without even having to take the wheels off.
Yeah.
My e-bike, not so much, because like I said, the handlebars are really wide. Front wheel off, most of the time you can get it in an estate car, but they're just a bit more tricky to get around. My other problem with it is I have been out and about with a friend of mine, but I don't have many friends with an e-bike. So my next door neighbour's got one, so we've been out a couple of times, but a good mate of mine who I go mountain biking with doesn't have an e-bike.
Okay.
And you can't really go out. We can't go out to the bike park. There's a bike park not that far from here. If one of us is on an e-bike and one of us is on a mountain bike, because then it's just,
yeah, it's crap.
It's because you just drop them all the time.
Which brings us to lightweight e-bikes, because that, I'm seeing now, is starting to become the gateway drug for hardcore mountain bikers, or at least people that are resistant to change, should we say. And they're seeing their friends have got full fat e-bikes, so they say, maybe I'll try and get a lightweight e-bike. Yeah, I mean,
I'm still the Paul had a really great phrase. The thing about an e-bike is it gets you over the thought of going out on your bike. If you're not really feeling that up for going out, if you know you're going out on an e-bike, it's an easier motivator to get on an e-bike. And I love my e-bike to bits, but what I don't really like is the whole attitude towards people who ride e-bikes or e-bikes in general. I've never been of the mindset that it's cheating at all. I love I said I've got I've got way too many bikes. I've got 6 or 7 bikes. I've got, I think, 3 road bikes. One of them's on my Zwift turbo trainer at the moment, so that's kind of, still a bike though, isn't it? I suppose. I'm trying to justify things to my wife that I don't
still
have
7
many
bikes.
Yeah. I've got a gravel bike, which is the SUV of the bike world. They're just fantastic things. You can go out, you can do a bit of road, you can do a bit of gravel. They're great, but then suffer when you want to do downhill quicker. And then I've got a full suspension mountain bike, and I've got an e-bike. So I've got all of those to choose from. But most of the time, the choice when I go out is normally I'll go out on my e-bike. And I'll come back. We were saying before we started the cameras rolling, irrespective of which bike I choose, I'll come back after my bike ride just as knackered. It doesn't matter which bike I'm on. I'll still come back knackered. I'll still come back having had a workout, having burnt that number of calories, having built up a sweat. The only difference with the e-bike is I'll have just gone further.
Yeah.
And faster.
I've actually found that my e-bike complements my road bike extremely well, especially because on e-bikes, the motors are most efficient at quite a high cadence. So you end up pedaling at that similar cadence that you would do on a road bike.
Yeah.
So when I then transition onto my road bike, it feels like quite an easy swap to make.
Yeah.
And what you say about the exercise or the the amount you get out of it, I guess that's down to the rider. But I know that I'm lacking that top end power that I used to have when I only rode mountain bikes, but I still do get a good workout.
Yeah, and the cadence thing's interesting. There is a real sweet spot, isn't there, when you start riding to get in that perfect torque delivery, perfect cadence when you're there. And I'm quite a high cadence rider on the road anyway, so I'll quite happily sit 80, 90.
Really?
Is my happy place. So like you say, on an e-bike, that's probably, I haven't got a cadence meter on my e-bike actually, but it just feels about that number.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just they're just a self-fulfilling prophecy. The people, the amount of times, oh, you got an e-bike, what's the range? Well, doesn't really ever play. So the fitter I get, the further the range is going to be.
Yeah.
If I go out and I don't have long and I want to have a blast, I've got a really nice route from here. It's about 25 miles. So on my mountain bike, it's about 3.5 hours, I guess. On my gravel bike, maybe 3. On my e-bike, it's under 2.
Yeah.
So if I ride that, I can ride that in EMTB or turbo and blast around it, or I can ride it in eco and have a harder workout. It's my choice at the end of the day.
For me, the e-bikes are great for maximizing your free time.
Yeah.
Because that classic after work session, whatever you want to do, just to get a quick blast in, it does for me, it incentivizes me just to, you know what? Okay, I will take the bike out.
Yeah.
It makes me think that way. Whereas my mountain bike, especially where I live, which is extremely hilly, just my regular mountain bike was far less attractive to have a quick session.
Yeah, it's quite hilly around here. So, but yeah, no. So I am trying to persuade my next door neighbour Will. I want him to get one so we can go out. And the biggest challenge, I think, they're not cheap things, are they? No. So, but having said that, you buy it. A lot of bike shops do 0% or some kind of finance deal over a couple of years. It's a bike you're going to use more than others. And the fascinating thing, talking to Paul when we did Cycle Sunday, is more people bought e-bikes in pairs than anything else.
Okay.
For them and their partner. They go into a shop. He said we sell more e-bikes in pairs. Favorite story that they had a couple come in, an older couple, and they were looking for an e-bike for the lady, for his wife. And they found this e-bike, and then they were at the till, and she said, I can't remember, his name was like Charlie or something. Charlie, maybe you could get one too, and then we could cycle out together. And he went, yeah, that's a very good idea. So the next thing they're over and they pick an e-bike for him. So the next thing they're buying 2 e-bikes.
Yeah.
And they come back to the till, and then they're like, how are we going to get it home? And they said to Paul, do you do carriers for cars? We have an SUV with a tow bar. We went, yeah. So they went and selected a bike carrier, and they came back to the till. And then they were just about to check out, and she went, what about a house in London? Because this is in Edinburgh. Maybe we need some bikes for there too. And the guy went, yeah, good idea. Could we have 2 more and another bike carrier?
Wow.
So in the space of, it was like the happy day. In the space of half an hour, they'd bought 4 bikes, 2 bike carriers. Went outside, they had a Range Rover and an Aston Martin DBX parked in the car.
Yeah, that's the sort of customer you want as a
Paul
bike shop
rang me up and
owner.
went, you're never going to guess what. I was like, really? So yeah, but they buying them in pairs, and I think you can then enjoy cycling with your other half. And I think sometimes, I know when Tracy and I have been out together on normal bikes, non-assisted bikes, if you get to a big hill or make a navigation error, if you're tired on a normal bike, that can be a real problem. On an e-bike, the amount of times I've been coming home and just thought, I've got an extra 20 minutes, I'll just pop up that hill or do that descent or add that loop, where I probably wouldn't do that on a normal bike. So I do love my bike.
It also limits the potential for arguments as well.
Oh yeah. We had a great. We've named all the big hills around here. So my wife's called Tracy. So we've got the Col de Tracy is the most infamous one, because we came back from a ride. It's a few years ago now. I think we've been done about 30 miles or so. And I went, "Oh, we'll go this way." And she went, "No, there's a big hill there." I went, "No, it's not." Anyway, there was a big hill, and it wasn't very nice. And we got to the top, and we didn't talk for a while. Whereas on e-bike, she'll absolutely destroy me wait for me at the top, and I'll be on my gravel bike trying to catch up.
Yeah. Going back to YouTube and particularly, to be honest, you are one of the influences as to why I started doing the podcast, because I've seen your YouTube channel over the years, and more recently seen your new podcast, which we should just briefly touch on. But I actually phoned you off just after, I think it could have been your first episode, and I said, you need to tell me about your setup, because I was like, that is exactly the sort of setup I would love to have one day.
Yeah.
And so you just very kindly just reeled off everything. I could tell you've been doing a lot of thinking about it already, and have been spent a lot of time on Amazon sort of looking for the right things to get.
And it's very familiar because it does feel very much like all I need now is Patrick and Joe here.
Yes.
But it's a very, very similar setup. I think YouTube and podcasting they have lots of crossover, but they are very different things as well. And for me, a podcast, I just love the freedom of just having a chat about subjects. You're not constrained by a script. Not that I script my YouTube videos, but you will want to get certain things into a video in a very short space of time. Whereas in a podcast, you've got a longer format. It sounds like you're on a similar track to me, so we'll try and stick to about an hour.
Yeah.
Because I think for most people that they're happy with that. You're just checking your mics and your levels, and just checking how long we've gone.
I'm already paranoid that camera stopped recording.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm literally going to check it right now. You just made me think that way.
Yay! There you go. That's the worst thing, though. If you are doing it on your own, is you know there's a lot to it. But no, for us, we've learned a lot podcasting. It's a very different medium.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge is logistics and getting access to interesting people. Obviously, you weren't able to do that today, so you had to make up with me.
There's been a lot of what's the word? We've been slightly off topic when it comes to e-bikes with a few of my guests so far.
Yeah.
I've had a photographer on, but he works around e-bikes.
Yeah.
He works in the bike industry, and I've recently had Ed Clancy on, who is a 3 times Olympic gold medalist in track cycling. However, he also owns a Trek Rail, as a matter of fact.
Oh, good man. Yeah.
So, as far as guests go so far, I'm enjoying the people I'm speaking with, but I think need to start to get more down to my niche, because I don't know, people are going to tune into an e-bike podcast. I think they're going to be having e-bike people.
Well, yeah. Although it's funny, sometimes the related stories and the crossover are just as interesting as the main subject matter. But the thing I find about bike people, and I started off, like I said, as a YouTuber doing cars, but now through Cycle Sunday, that opened up a lot of stuff to bikes. Joe, who I do the podcast with, he's an very, very good downhill mountain biker.
Yeah.
Like really, really good.
Need to speak to him.
And world Brompton champion.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What do you mean world Brompton champion? Where do you go with that?
So I asked the same question. So he was originally, I think, an enduro mountain biker. Then he went into downhill, got very good at downhill, and then had a couple of really nasty accidents. He ended up in intensive care in Austria or something like that.
As is often the way.
A really big off. And I don't think he was ever quite as quick again.
Yeah.
Then he started commuting in London on a Brompton. And I don't know how he found out about Brompton racing, because he didn't even know that was a thing, and I didn't know it was a thing either. But in the early days of Brompton racing, he actually raced at Goodwood, and it was a sprint race. But Brompton racing is great because you wear a suit, right? So he turned up and he won, and he was world champion. I think he came back the next year and won it, and then the following year, by that time, everyone was clocking onto this Brompton racing thing.
Yeah.
People like David Miller were turning up and stuff, and he was a bit off the pace. But yeah, his claim to fame is he is a Brompton world champion.
I've been no stranger to unusual world record attempts. I once helped film the penny farthing hour record in a velodrome. So we did it.
Penny farthing on a velodrome.
On a velodrome. Yeah, it's insane. So we initially did it outdoors, which was at Herne Hill, which is an old outdoor velodrome in South London.
Yeah.
And our plan was to recreate and to hopefully break the record that was set like 100 years ago. I think it's one of the longest standing records in the Guinness Book of Records. Which they failed to do. And so that it was a hell of a record, basically. But we then went to set the first ever indoor hour record. And the first question was, would it even be possible to ride a penny farthing indoors on a velodrome?
Which velodrome? Some are steeper than others, right?
It was... where was it? It was bloody steep velodrome. Flipping out, it was in the Midlands. It'll come back.
Because I rode... was it last year? I rode velodrome for the first time in London.
Okay.
With Chris Hoy, which was quite cool.
As you do.
But it was just terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, I think if anyone listening hasn't ridden on a velodrome, you've got to give it a go. If you love your bikes, you've got to give it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But to do it on a penny farthing, I mean, to ride a penny, there's an old guy who lives around here, and he goes, you'll see him in the summer, and he rides his penny farthing, but he gets all properly dressed up in all the tweed and the +4s, and he's got a waxed moustache. No. He looks a deer stalker hat. It's amazing. But yeah, wow, that's hardcore.
Yeah. Going back to your channel, what were some of your biggest inspirations when, I mean, you actually started, I saw regular output from about 7 years ago.
It'll be 8 years, 1st of January was my first ever video, yeah. I think I've done, I'm a trainer in telecoms. I've done that for 25 years. So I've always been comfortable standing up and presenting. I'm a bit of a kind of, I guess, not show off, but I like that, and I know I'm good at it. So, and I love my cars. So I'd watch the channels that, Shmee 150 and Supercars of London and Seen Through Glass, all the big channels or the growing channels at that time. And I just thought I could do that. Yeah. I'd love to give it a go. And I just bought a camcorder and stood outside the house there and filmed my first video, and no aspirations of ever thinking it would be my job. It was just purely a bit of fun at the weekend. But things grow and you start. I started with my cars and friends' cars, and then started doing some stuff with local car dealerships, and was very lucky. I had a couple of videos do really, really well quite early by pure fluke. I filmed with a Range Rover Velar when that first came out with the local Jaguar Land Rover dealer. They do like 4 times a year they did a track day at Goodwood where they had some of their cars that you could drive out on a road route, like a little 20-minute road route. And I got access to this Velar, did the video, put it out that week. Little did I know that the global embargo for Velar dropped that week. I didn't even know what an embargo was then.
Oh, no.
That was fine. And my video just went...
I thought you were going to say that you released it before the embargo.
No, I think it was just, I was just really lucky. It was either the day or a day after the embargo lifted. Wow. It was just, there was nothing on the car on YouTube. Yeah. And that was my first 100,000 view video. And then you kind of grow through dealers, and then eventually you get to a size where you might be able to talk to manufacturers directly. And that's a process that takes years and years. Some are quite accommodating to smaller channels and will give you access to cars. Audi gave me my first press car.
Because 8 years ago was like pretty early doors when it comes to people putting out regular YouTube content. There weren't many people
there were people around in the car space before that. Obviously, Shmee was even then quite big. He's huge now, and a good friend now. That's the weird thing, that lots of those guys, I know them all now, and have done collaborations with them or have their number. If, like, I gave you some tips on our podcast, I've done the same thing with some of the bigger channels, just ask their advice, really. But yeah, it was early doors, and I start a YouTube channel now knowing what I know? Probably not. I think it's such a congested space now. There are so many people trying to do it. I don't think if you think you're going to start YouTube as Tim said to me once, for fame or fortune, forget it.
Yeah.
Because that's you do it because you enjoy it, and if you're good at it and the quality of the content is good enough, then you'll rise to the top and you'll be successful. But for me, YouTube probably cost me money for the first 5 or 6 years.
Right. That's a long time.
It's a long time because if you get a car for a day, you've got fuel and time and all those types of things. If you go to a press event or if you travel somewhere, I took a Kia Stinger earlier this year to Wales for 3 days. It's fuel there, 2 nights in a hotel.
Yeah.
3 days worth of work. If the video doesn't do well, you're in the negative. So now I'm very lucky. I'm at a point where it is what I do, which is weird.
Yeah.
But
it's weird.
Great fun. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
But I've never worked harder in my life in terms of I never turn off. I've just come back from a few days away with my wife and tried really hard to turn off and not engage, but I still did. I didn't do any editing and I didn't do any filming, but I had videos drop while I was away. You can't help but look to see how the video's doing, look to see what the comments are like. Yeah,
YouTube Studio is quite a dangerous app.
It's a very dangerous app. It's not good for your mental health and your kind of just general well-being.
Yeah.
Because you're either up or down. A video does well and you're super happy and you'll see it. I'll be on there within an hour of the video dropping, looking what the numbers are like, and if it's good, you think, oh, that's all right. If a video doesn't do that well, then you just start doubting and questioning yourself. And it's not up or down over a period of weeks or months. It can be days. Yeah. This time last week, I had a video drop, did really, really well. I was on a real high, thinking channel's doing great. Video that went up on Monday's not done as well as I'd hoped it would, and I'm sitting there questioning myself. And so it is a difficult thing. I'm going away in first part or early part of the new year for 2 weeks, and I've promised myself a total detox for 2 weeks. I'll still drop videos, but I'll have them all edited and scheduled to go live while I'm away. But I'm going to try and put my phone in this. I've not done that. I've not really had a day off in 8 years.
Wow.
I'm always thinking about it, even at the weekend.
The funny thing is, I feel exactly the same way, and every day for me is a working day. And we would, myself and my partner Jen, were just talking yesterday about the fact that we both need to think more about our free time and about maximizing our free time, because it's so easy as a self-employed person to just always work.
Yeah, and I have to put it into context. Work. It's not like I'm doing brain surgery or I'm working for minimum wage, 15 hours a week 15 hours a day in a kitchen.
Yeah,
I'm driving cars and stuff, but it's a constant thing, and it's an addiction. And I know people talk about the whole dopamine effect of social media, and I guess in one way I'm creating that effect for other people. But when you are a creator, it's very difficult to not constantly be, especially when you then want it to be your living. You want videos to do commercially well. And it's not just the ad revenue that comes from a video, but if your videos aren't doing well in terms of numbers, it's more difficult to get brand deals and integrations and those types of things. So
it's a lot of pressure.
I try, in the evening when we're sat here and we're watching the telly, it's very difficult not to keep looking at my phone. So I'll maybe put it in the bedroom on the charger and just leave it there because I get shouted at. But yeah, it is a constant battle. But it's still, I'm living the dream. I've done things in cars and met people that I never dreamed I would ever get to do. And I'm very, very lucky. But I still want more.
Who's the most, let's go most famous person you think you might have ever met, and also the most interesting person that you might have ever met? You can combine the two if you like.
I think in the car space, I wouldn't say the most famous, but the one that I still find amazing is, as a car guy, I grew up watching Tiffany Dell on Top Gear and then on Fifth Gear.
Yeah.
And he's now a mate, and we've done a few films together and hosted events together, and
Yeah.
We're doing something together at Bewley Motor Museum in the new year, and that's quite weird. We're both. I'm a brand ambassador for a local car dealership called the Hendy Group, and we're both brand ambassadors for Hendy Group. So to kind of get to work with Tiff when that happened for the first time a couple of years ago, that was quite a cool thing. But then in terms of, I guess, some of the things I've done at Goodwood, I've driven up the hill at the Festival of Speed for the last 5 Goodwood Festival of Speeds, and during that process met some amazing people, which has been very cool. Famous drivers or whatever. And I actually had this year. I was in the drivers club and Chris Harris came up and said, "Love the podcast, by the way." And I was like, "Oh, this is amazing!"
Direct competition.
Chris Harris is watching my podcast. So I quickly got on the phone to Joe and went, "Oh, Joe, Pat, Chris Harris watches the podcast."
Do you watch the Collecting Cars podcast?
Yeah. And that's a really interesting example of podcast style. Is that's very rough and ready style. It's just a Zoom call, but it's the people on the pod and the way they are and the banter they have. I guess the other thing is, are you listening to a podcast or are you watching it?
Yeah.
So if you're listening to it, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. But if you're watching it, it's a very different style. But
yes.
They're just a bunch of lads having fun, basically.
Yeah. He's another bike guy, actually. I remember he got do you remember he bought a Ferrari FF?
Yeah.
And I remember he brought it to North Wales with his orange 5 in the back. Just sort of like took the wheels off, jammed it in, that'll do. Yeah. And came for a ride at the Marin Trail. And I just remember thinking, it'd been great to bump into Chris Harris on his mountain bike.
Yeah, they are. I mean, the amount of guys like that, car guys that do their bikes. And they're normally really nice bike. I'm in a kind of supercar and sports car club, and there's some guys in there that have some really, really nice kit.
Really?
Yeah. Really, really nice. Often road bikes, but some really nice hardware.
Yeah.
And they'll have their lovely man cave with their lovely Ferrari or whatever it is, and then on the wall, I'm just about to have our garage done in the new year because we've got an open fronted cart barn where you parked your camper, and that's going to be a double garage and an office and a gym. And a bit of a studio, but the bikes are going on the walls.
The dream.
The dream.
I like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be brave enough to put my bikes on the walls. One, because they're too heavy, being about 23
this
kilos.
Is true. Yeah.
And the other is they're too bloody filthy most of the time.
Talking about e-bikes, though, did you see the Lotus collaboration, that the new road bike they've done with a lightweight battery in it? So it's
no.
It's what do they call it now? The Type something. So the Team GB track bike, the Hope bike,
yes,
the Lotus one. It's kind of an evolution of that. So from a frame style point of view, it looks a little bit like that with the wide stays at the back.
Yeah.
But it's also it's a road bike, but it's got a lightweight motor in it as well.
Whoa.
So it's an e-bike. Looks very cool. It's probably about £1 million, but.
Do you know the story of Fabian Cancellara and the road bike with a motor supposedly in the Tour de France?
Oh, I know the rumours.
Yeah. So I went and filmed an interview with him at his house, and we actually went to his lockup where he had all his old memorabilia, and the bike was there, the motor bike. And he obviously adamantly said, like, you can see it here. It's still got the dirt on it from the day that I rode it, where I was accused of having this bike with the motor in it. You can have a look at it. You can take it apart if you want. There is no motor. But that's one of those, unusual examples of where the world of bikes suddenly thought, looks like you could fit a motor into that down tube. Yeah,
and I think that, now, I've not actually ridden a road e-bike. But they are. I mean, I even mountain. You were talking about the lightweight off-road bikes. I was in my local bike shop. Even since my Trek Rail 9.5, which is only 18 months old, the new generation of e-bike motors and batteries is just like on another level, size and weight wise.
Yeah, very sleek.
So yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me what they can get into a road frame at all. I see the point of an e-road bike much less than an e-mountain bike.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm more of a purist roadie. I don't know. I love climbing mountains. You might not be able to see, but in that cabinet over there, I've got all the little coals. And right in the top right-hand corner of the cabinet, every coal marker for every coal I've climbed, because I love climbing coals.
Yeah.
In France, but that definitely would be cheating on an e-bike.
Yeah. For me, it's one of those where, what is road cycling to you? Are you doing it for the fitness? Are you doing it just for the experience of being out on the road with other people that enjoy doing it?
Yeah, true.
And I think if it gives people that added incentive to go and do it, then absolutely go for it.
If you're not fully able-bodied, if you've got some kind of, maybe you've got dodgy knees or whatever it might be. I just remember my mate who used to live next door, me and him, we did Ventoux 3 times in a day 3 years ago now, I think. And I just remember we were going up the last climb of the day, both of us destroyed, absolutely destroyed. And this big fat guy on an e-bike in a pair of jeans and flip-flops came past. And I could hear him coming, you could hear the e-bike whine coming. And as he came past, he went, "Allez, allez!" And we're like, just flew past us, and we're like, "Rrr."
Do you know that the only time I've ever ridden Alpe d'Huez was on a shoot, and I was on an e-bike, on an e-mountain bike, and I did exactly that to somebody. Someone was grinding their way up, and I had this bloody great camera bag on my back, and I just cruised up past them because I had to get the next shot, and I felt dreadful. I felt really bad because I knew that it would have completely destroyed him mentally to see that.
But there's
happen.
always someone. But I when I had my Specialized Venge, I'd only had it about a few weeks, I think, and I'd gone on my first big ride. I did a 50 miler, and I was coming back. And there's a big hill near here, only about 5 miles from the house, but I was nearly home going up this hill, and an old boy went past me on a fixie, and he must have been like 65 years old.
Whoa!
And you had to. I've done 50 miles. That's all I wanted to say to him. And he just went on this fixie.
Amazing.
But there's always somebody better than you and faster than you.
We've good that we've touched on electric bikes, because that's very important on this podcast.
Yes, e-mountain bikes, and e-road bikes.
I don't do it often enough. Now I'm looking at cars.
Yeah.
Tell me a reason why Tesla shouldn't be my next car.
Wow, what a way to phrase the question. So I'm going to answer that in one of two ways. Okay. The way that I would most often get comments and stuff from car people is electric cars are the devil, and they're expensive, and they're not green, and petrol cars are better, and it's a pain in the arse to live with an electric car. I get that argument completely, but one of my challenges as a car guy, even though my channel is called PetrolPed, and it's called PetrolPed because my name's Peter, I've been known by my family as Pedro since I was about 4.
Okay.
My eldest brothers, big Formula One fans, and their hero driver was a guy called Pedro Rodriguez. Yeah. And they named me Pedro. And when I went to university, Pedro became Ped. And I thought when I started my channel, I'd come up with some flashy name, PetrolPed, great idea. Genius. Until you want to review a car that's not powered by a petrol engine, then it becomes a little bit more challenging. But so there is the whole petrol EV communities are very, very entrenched and very polarized. And I don't get it at all.
Okay.
Outside, I've got my Porsche in the garage, which is petrol, performance, sports car, amazing thing. I've currently got a Kia Niro EV press car, amazing thing. They're just good at different things, right?
Yeah.
Tesla, if you want to go into electric and you want the least worrisome ownership experience, and if you're going to be driving more than 50 to 100 miles a day, because if you only do 50 to 100 miles a day, and you've got the ability to charge a car at home, I've got an electric car charger in my garage, then any EV pretty much will be a piece of cake to live with. Mm-hmm. We ran a Mustang Mach-E as a long-termer for 9 months, never used public charging once.
Wow.
Because every morning you wake up and it's full.
Yeah.
It's got, whatever the range is, 250, 300 miles.
Yeah.
And if you never plan to do that in a day, by the time you come back home, plug it in, it's full again the next day. So and you get off-peak tariffs, and it's super cheap to run. So super easy. My challenge, or lots of people's challenges with EVs, if you don't have somewhere to park it at home, so you live in a flat or you don't have off-street parking, the ownership experience becomes much, much more challenging.
Yeah.
Because you then are beholden to public charging. You might be able to charge at work. Lots of employers give you free charging at work. If you own a Tesla, all of that kind of not goes away, but their charging infrastructure that they own themselves is so good and integrates with the car so well.
Yeah.
You don't get range anxiety in a Tesla. If you want to go and do 200, 300, 400 miles in a Tesla, it's super easy. If you plug in a route that's too far for the current charge state of the battery, the car just says, okay, we aren't going to get there. So if you stop at this supercharger here for 20 minutes and then be on your way and you'll get there.
Well, I was on the way down here yesterday. I stopped at our local petrol station, a Tesco petrol station, and we were probably queuing for 10 minutes. Took me 5 minutes to fill up and pay. We were there for the best part of 15 or 20 minutes, just getting fuel because it was busy. And it made me think at the time, it probably wouldn't be that much longer than that to just fill up and go and grab a coffee with an electric car.
The Tesla, what they are very good at is when you plug a Tesla's charge station into your car, into the sat nav, it does what's called preconditioning. So it knows where you're going to stop, and it starts to warm the batteries and prepare the batteries.
Whoa.
So that by the time you get to the supercharge station and you plug it in, the battery pack is in its optimum state to accept charge as quickly as possible.
Amazing.
And then they're normally quite high-speed chargers anyway. So you could be charging at 500 or 600 miles an hour. So that's people go, what do you mean? That's a speed measurement, not a charge speed measurement. What it means is if you plugged into there, you would add 600 miles of range in an hour if the battery pack was big enough. Well, a Tesla will normally do about 300 miles to a full charge. So what that really means is if you're charging at, let's say, 600 miles an hour, is you only really need to be plugged into it for 15 to 20 minutes and you've got 80% of charge.
That's brilliant.
And you can be on your way. And that's, that's pretty frequent user experience in a Tesla. The only challenge a lot of people would have with Teslas, and I know quite a few people who've got them, is they're not the prettiest of cars in the world.
Yeah.
And they're not the best made cars in the world. But most Tesla owners I know don't really care about that. My mate, he's got one. He's got a Model Y. He's come out of high-end BMWs, a couple of Porsches, really nice cars. And he'll be the first to say, this Tesla's made not great.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Because it's great.
He's
got it through, it's a company car, so he's got lower benefit in kind. It's on a salary sacrifice scheme and all that kind of. So, it's as a step into EV, Tesla are, I know, and especially now they dropped their prices, are a really good option. But they're not the only EV to buy, but they do it really well.
They do have a bit of a Zanussi washing machine sort of appearance in white sometimes, I find.
They are. And, I remember going and doing something with Tesla in early days of the channel, and I went to one of their showrooms and they said, we don't sell cars here. We sell technology and we sell lifestyle.
Good. I like that.
And that's what it is. It's an enabler for your lifestyle.
Yeah.
But and then the other problem, lots of people have with Tesla is the owner of Tesla is a quite polarizing chap, isn't he? So some people will hate what Elon Musk does and stands for in some of his other businesses, and that'll be a problem. But you could do that for lots of car brands if you really wanted to go down that route.
Well, I own a couple of shares in Tesla, and I'm all for them, and I hope that one day those shares will buy me a Tesla.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, they are good EV. And if you got something like a Model Y, bear in mind we're doing a bike podcast.
Yes,
they're huge inside.
There's a very well-known bike YouTuber, and his everyday vehicle is now a Tesla Model Y, and he went from a VW T6 to or maybe T5 to a Model Y, and with a tow bar bike rack, which is e-bike load rated, and he wouldn't go back.
Yep.
Yeah. Seems like the way forward.
They're super practical, and the interior takes a bit of getting used to with a big tablet screen, but they've got some really cool features. I had the one they've got, bear in mind I've got the 2 dogs fast asleep on me. Dog mode is the best feature because you've got a dog in your van now.
Yeah.
Tesla dog mode is just genius.
Yeah.
So you park up, leave the dog in the car, set the internal temperature to whatever you want it to be. There's a big screen on the dash that just says, my owner knows I'm here. It's this temperature. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Basically, you can go on the app on your phone and you've got like an internal camera. You can check the dogs are okay. You can turn the temperature up or down.
Love it.
Brilliant. Absolutely mega.
That is good. And I think that they are forward thinking in the industry and clearly industry leaders, because we see things like the Cybertruck now, which is just out of this world. What's your opinion on that? A short sort of summary of the Cybertruck?
Looks like it's been designed by a 3-year-old with a crayon.
Elon Musk.
Yeah, I just don't get it at all. I really don't get it. I saw an interesting thing yesterday, whether or not or how likely it is that it's going to be able to be road legal over here because of the front end of it isn't deformable. It's made of stainless steel and it's got sharp edges and things. But I don't know the details. But
yeah, I suppose the question would be, when people first saw the DeLorean, did they say the same thing? And now it's a bit of a cult icon.
It is, although having spent some time in DeLorean, they are terrible cars, but they look quite cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess sometimes there are cars that you just can't get your head round, and for me, I just don't see the attraction of Cybertruck at all. The fact it beat a 911 in a drag race, towing a 911, I thought that was quite a cool PR stunt, but I don't understand that. But again, from a bike point of view, it's got that covered payload area at the back. So I ran an MSRT Ford Ranger for 6 months as a long-termer, and that was a brilliant bike truck, if you like, because on the flatbed at the back, I had 2 bike bars and 2 bike racks on top of the flatbed at the back, and it was brilliant because we go to the bike park with the mountain bikes and get covered in crap and mud everywhere, and you didn't care because it was a truck. Yeah. So when that went back, I was very, very disappointed because that was for mountain biking. That was really cool.
Now we're in the world of electric cars, and more, obviously in sort of 10 years' time, it might only be electric cars. Is it becoming more difficult for you to review vehicles because they're all becoming quite similar?
Oh, yeah. It's a real... I think the challenge is EVs, and it's not because I don't like EVs. If you get an EV that drives nicely, I mean, I always say anybody who is an EV doubter, I just say, go and drive a Porsche Taycan and tell me that's not a great car. They're phenomenal things. Okay. They are a bit one-trick pony in that they're very quick in a straight line. A lot of EVs, because they've got so much weight, they're a little bit more hampered through corners just because they're big, old, heavy things. The problem I've got with them is a lot of them are built on shared platforms. So if you looked at something like Stellantis, which is now the likes of Peugeot, Citroën, Alfa Romeo,
have you heard
Vauxhall?
Have you heard? Sorry to butt in. Johnny Smith talking about Stellantis and how he's like, you said, it sounds like a techno rave. Let's go to Stellantis. Sorry,
that's probably about right. Again, another guy I've got to know now through YouTube. But they're all very similar underpinnings, so they're the same car basically with a different dress.
Yeah.
So they all drive very similarly, and so it's quite difficult. In the good old days, you'd have different styles of gearbox, you'd have different power delivery through the engine, different noises, different the details of things like clutch bite points, brake feel, steering feel. There was always things you could talk about.
Yeah.
Noise. Now with an EV, a lot of those things have gone, so it is quite difficult to find the differences. And I'm not really a channel that focuses in on onboard tech that much. So there are some channels that all they do really is like the infotainment system or I'm not interested in all of that. You can Google how that works. I always try and do stuff you can't Google.
Yeah.
So what does it feel like to drive? What are the different modes feel like? So I do find it a bit more tricky. The bit that I find, going back to the conversation about looking at comments and stuff, is just the polarized opinions of the cars. My latest video that went up this week was the new Kia EV9, which is their big 7-seat electric SUV, which again would be an amazing bike carrier.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing car, but it's a big SUV. It's the first 3-row seat SUV.
Is that right?
That's an all EV platform. They're like the top spec one's 70 plus grand for a Kia, which a lot of people have a problem with, but it's probably built as well as any Range Rover I've ever sat in.
Okay.
But it's the vitriol you get. Either people say, "Oh, it looks like an interesting car," or it's just how can that save the planet? It's too heavy. It's battery cars catch fire. Don't get me on that one. In fact, we could have a chat about batteries and charging and stuff, because that's a common thing in cars, and I know it's an issue some people worry about with battery powered bikes. But I think it's a very similar thing. There's a lot of misunderstanding in the press about those things.
Yeah, I actually, my dad, who's a Telegraph reader, will often comment on the negatives of electric cars, and the amount of articles you see that are bashing electric cars, they just hammering it over and over again, and you think, what incentive is there for them to keep suppressing them?
I think that, I know the Telegraph. I'm pretty sure it's the Telegraph did that Luton car fire. Right,
yeah,
where the car park went up.
Yeah, and they all fell through the floors, didn't they?
Yeah, and I know, I'm pretty sure Telegraph did an article on that about the fact that electric cars caused the fire. Well, news people, that car fire was caused by a diesel Range Rover.
Is that right?
Yes. It wasn't an electric car.
No.
It wasn't a hybrid. It was a diesel Range Rover. That's what the police or the fire brigade said.
Is it a sensationalist thing that just sells more papers, or is it the fact that they're funded by less savoury big oil giants?
I don't know what the conspiracy theories are, but statistically speaking, it is far more likely for a petrol car to catch fire than an electric car. If you look at the number of car fires per year, the larger, and I know there are more petrol cars, but if you pro rata that to the number of, as a ratio, it's more likely a petrol car will catch fire.
Did you see the article in America about the Tesla that a man with his wife and kids in the back, he decided to drive off the side of a cliff, and he fell, I think, 250 feet off a cliff, right, and the car remained intact, and they all survived, and the thing did not catch fire. It just crumpled to bits at the bottom of this giant cliff, and they all survived. And
wow.
There's a reason to buy a Tesla, if anything.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't know that. Don't get me wrong. If an electric car catches fire, it's bad news, because they go into thermal runaway and they're very difficult to extinguish.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunately, it's one of these things where you just need to have a read round and try and get the right amount of information. And it's very similar. So I've got a couple of videos where I've got an electric car parked in the barn, and the comments, I wouldn't park it there. Your barn's going to catch fire. And I think it's the same thing with people with batteries on e-bikes. Yes, there have been examples of e-bikes, their batteries catching fire when they've been charging. A lot of those are cheap knockoff e-bikes.
Yeah.
And that, for me, one of the things I would say, going back to bike, I'm getting you back to e-bikes.
Thank you.
Podcast,
I need you to do that.
Is I would. So my next door neighbour has an e-bike, and it's I don't even know the make actually, but it's a cheaper one. It would be very tempting to buy the cheapest one you can to get into e-bikes, and my advice would always be, and I know it's easy to say that when you can afford not to do that, but you really do need to buy the best you can from a well-known brand.
Yeah.
And if you look at a Trek or a Specialized or that kind of level, or a Giant, those types of manufacturers have always said to people, whenever you're buying bikes, because they are able to buy in such scale, that their bikes are, when you look at the price you pay for them and the amount of kit you have on them, they're always a safe bet.
Yeah.
When we did the Cycle Sunday videos, we talked about, always buy the frame first, or the best frame you can, because everything else you can change.
Good point.
Even on a mountain bike, our advice was always buy the best frame you can, because your consumables, things like your group set,
You're going to change.
You're going to smash the crap out of them anyway.
Yeah.
So there's no point buying a really flash group set because they're expensive.
True.
My road bike, we went Super Record EPS Campagnolo group set, which is amazing, but the group set was £4,500. The rear cassette is £400, right? So you have to change one of them, every, I don't know, it depends where you've been riding and how hard you've been riding and stuff. But but going back to e-bikes, it's very tempting. You can go buy an e-bike on eBay for £900.
Yeah, that's
the kind of bike that's going to burn your house down.
It is, isn't it? Absolutely.
So
yeah,
you spend a couple of grand. I don't know what your thoughts are on the. I know it depends on the size of frame and those types of things, but to get a reasonable quality e-bike, you need to be probably dropping at least a couple of grand.
Yeah, you do, and it depends where you ride. If you want something that's for big hitting sort of trails, and you're riding a lot of steep, techie off-piste stuff, you want something with good geometry, and it's gonna you easily drop £4,000 on a bike like that without even thinking about it. You can definitely get your money goes a lot further if you're not planning on doing quite such extreme stuff. I know, like Vitus bikes, for example, who I've worked with for many years. They've got a new e-bike out, the e-Mythique, and it's a great value enduro e-bike. Cracking motor. They've got a new Bafang motor, the I think Chinese manufacturer, and they previously would just sell you the motor direct, but now they're actually starting to fit them onto production bikes, and it's a cracking bit of kit, but it's let down by the components. It's something you can upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did that with my original road bike. I bought a giant aluminium frame, carbon fork, carbon seat post bike. It had Tiagra group set, I think. And when I bought my Venge, that had 105 on it. And I really wanted a Di2.
Yeah.
So I upgraded the Venge to Di2 and put the 105 on the Giant. So you kind of shuffled it down and upgraded everything. But yeah, you can always change out your group set.
So on the subject of you, I'm going to follow your lead because your podcast lasts an hour.
How long have we been going?
We're already at 1 hour and 4 minutes.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Time flies when you're having fun. Double check that all the cameras are still on.
They're still on. Hey, look at that. They're all still working.
Yeah, they actually are.
Oh, man, you've got a podcast out of it.
Let me double check that one. Hang on.
Hey.
Bloody hell. Amateur hour.
You can cut that bit out. It's fine.
Yeah, I will. Cut.
So I've had 2 dogs asleep on me for an hour, look.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So we'll move on to a regular feature which I've been doing on the podcast, which is quick fire questions.
Oh, no. Here we go. Go on.
Pressure.
Then.
Yeah. We'll do, okay. Favorite country?
Oh. Favorite country that I've been to? France, probably, because I lived in France for a bit. I did French as part of my degree, and I just love going to France. And for cycling, it's just an amazing place because I think the culture there is just, they're so into their bikes. And it makes a change when you ride a bike, especially if you're a road cyclist. You ride on the road and people kind of clap you as you go past rather than give you the bird and start shouting at you. I love France, and as a cycling country, I think. And the cols, if you go down to the Pyrenees or the Alps, they've got some amazing places.
I think I'd agree. Best driving road in the UK? Don't give away your favourite one though, just in case.
Best driving road in the UK. You can't go far wrong if you go up into the Highlands of Scotland. There's a couple of roads up there. I wouldn't necessarily say the NC 500 because that's normally a bit tight and a bit full of vans. But if you come inland a little bit into some of the Highlands, kind of round, is it Glencoe and round there, there's some really nice bits of driving. I did a drive tour up there a couple of years ago. And then it's not the UK, but it's close. Ireland, There's some phenomenal driving in Ireland.
See, that's why I said the UK, because my next question is best driving road in the world that you've experienced.
Oh, that's I'm going to give you 2. one in Spain called the Calada de Tossa, which is Jeremy Clarkson's favourite road. Very difficult to say. I did it on a drive tour about 18 months ago. It is, how long was it? Is it 35, maybe 40 kilometres long of the best twisting road ever? And when we did it in a convoy of 12 supercars, we had maybe 2 cars that we saw. It was just a phenomenal road.
Wow.
And then the other one is best known as the Red Rock Road, which is just on the hills above Monaco. That's phenomenal. It's not the best driving road, but it's just because it's got the 2 lanes of the road split, and you go through these kind of holes in the rock and the cliffs and stuff.
Yes,
phenomenal. Absolutely mega bit of road.
Best circuit.
Oh. Well, I would say Goodwood because that's my local one, but actually my favourite circuit to drive is Alton Park.
Yes,
I love Alton Park, and I've raced there a few times now, and it's a very difficult track to go fast at because there's a couple of corners that need a lot of commitment.
That last, I guess the last half of the track, the last third of the track's pretty committing, isn't it?
Yeah, and if it goes wrong,
very wrong.
But yeah, I love Alton Park. I love Donington Park as well, but Alton Park is probably my favourite.
Coupe or convertible?
Convertible.
Estate or saloon?
Estate.
That's easy, isn't it? Electric or ICE? For anybody watching or listening, ICE is internal combustion engine.
Oh, it would definitely be internal combustion engine. But that doesn't mean to say I don't like an electric. But yeah, ICE all the way.
Favourite current F1 driver?
Lando Norris.
I think I'd agree with you there.
Yeah. I love Lando Norris. One, he drives for my favourite team.
Yeah.
I've been a McLaren fan for years and years, but I just think he's cool, and closely followed by George Russell and Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a bit of a man crush on Charles Leclerc, really. I think he is like the perfect human being, which is very annoying.
Yeah,
because he lives in Monaco. He drives for Ferrari. He's quite good looking. He's just annoying, really.
Irritating.
Yeah.
Best circuit on the F1 calendar?
My favourite race, which is always the worst race, is Monaco.
Mm-hmm.
Best circuit, Spa.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Again, Spa, just having been there this year for the first time, actually. Have you been? Spa?
I've still not.
No. Spa is one. So Eau Rouge as a corner is amazing. When you actually go to Eau Rouge in person, and you stand at the bottom of Eau Rouge and you look up at it. Joe best described it. He said it looked like a climbing wall. It's just so steep. Amazing, amazing circuit. Yeah, Spa, I think.
I'll never forget. We actually went to Silverstone Grand Prix in the Brawn era of F1. And
that 1 year, 2009.
That 1 year, yeah. And we camped in a campsite and practiced first day. I remember approaching the circuit, and we rose over just one of the little hills just beside the circuit. And as we came over the top, Vettel was coming through Maggots and Beckett's flat out. And I just remember thinking, how is that even possible?
I think as a complex of corners, having an F1 car go through their full chat, especially in that era where you've got the V8 absolutely screaming its nuts off, be a bit different nowadays because they won't sound quite as good. But yeah, that's about as when you see that load transfer from one side to another.
Yeah. Your dream car, and maybe let's talk about like unrealistic ambitions, and then maybe possible one day I'd like to have that car.
Unrealistic ambitions. I'm going to be really boring and say McLaren F1.
Yeah.
I still think that's the pinnacle of car design, really.
Not a Gordon Murray.
Well,
T50.
Yeah, they do. The T50 does look amazing. Yes, but I think there's still that. There's something about McLaren F1. I was very lucky. I went in a McLaren F1 GTR last year as a passenger around Silverstone, being driven by Derek Bell. That was a pretty good moment, to be fair. But yeah, McLaren F1 would be. I think they're a phenomenal thing.
And then a realistic, like maybe one day that could be a possible car you might own.
A McLaren 600 LT, probably. Of all the supercars I've driven, and I've been very lucky, I've driven quite a lot now, that for me is just it's fast enough for my driving capabilities. It's within my talent envelope. And I just think they look like spaceships. I know they've not made them for a couple of years now, but with the exhaust coming out the back and the Spider, definitely.
Yeah.
But interestingly, though, the more supercars I get to drive, the less likely I want a supercar. Or the less I want a supercar, rather.
So on that subject, I'm starting to look at like my dream car as the Porsche 911 Dakar.
Yes.
And the reason for it is the state of the roads in the UK.
Yeah.
And the places where I'd like to bring a car. I think it would be the perfect UK supercar.
I drove one up the hill at Goodwood this year.
Did you?
Yeah. Amazing. I've got a friend of mine his comes January, and he's getting the Martini livery on it. So I drove the Rough Roads livery, which is, they couldn't call it Rothmans for obvious reasons. But that livery's like 30 grand, I think, paint job. But yeah, no, amazing car. Yeah, really, really cool car. Perfect pothole beater.
Indeed. Okay, bikes, SRAM or Shimano?
Shimano.
Yeah.
Why haven't you got Campagnolo in there?
Well, we could go roadie. Would you choose that?
I would. Interestingly, I will say Shimano, even though my e-bike has SRAM on it, and I think it's fantastic.
The brakes are easier to bleed, in my opinion, on the Shimano.
I don't do that. I give it to my bike shop. I'm a complete bike maintenance. I'm rubbish at bike maintenance.
In Morzine, I spoke to somebody who ran a bike shop there, and they actually said they charge double for bleeding SRAM brakes because it's quite likely they have to do it again.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how tricky they can be. That's the difference between mineral oil and DOT brake fluid, but there we go. That's another subject. I've got one. That was my only quick fire bike question. I'm shit at this.
You should have things like, I don't know, your favourite bike manufacturer. That
your favourite bike manufacturer. Well, that's not even road bike, mountain bike, is it?
No, Bianchi for road bikes, and my gravel bikes. I've got Bianchi Arcadex gravel bike, and I just love it to bits.
Yeah.
But I do love my trek bike, and I do love my Specialized bike. But I think there's just this. I've got this love affair with the whole Bianchi thing.
Yeah.
But I just like a really nicely put together bike.
Yeah.
So e-bike wise, I love my Trek Rail. There you
go. Best motoring journalist, or your favourite, not necessarily the best.
I'm gonna say 3, and that's
bloody hell.
That's bad.
Hammond, Clarkson, and May.
No, I think they're all idiots. Actually, I think from a YouTube point of view, in terms of what he does, Henry Catchpole.
Yep.
I think he is right up there in terms of just. I love the way he scripts and storyboards and produces his films. I know he's working for Haggerty now, but he just does some of the best and has done some of the best videos ever. Chris Harris, but I'm going to be controversial and say pre and post Top Gear Chris Harris.
Yeah.
So I loved Chris before he went to Top Gear. I didn't mind him in Top Gear actually, but it's really interesting to see now Top Gear is not going to happen anymore. He's got his mojo back, and again, I've got to meet both of those guys on press drives and at Goodwood and stuff, and that's quite cool. You have to do the kind of First time I met Henry Catchpole on a press trip, I went up and said, "Look, I remember he did a video years and years ago of him driving a Caterham 7 up a snowy alpine pass in France. It's still on YouTube. It's just he's just like full opposite lock each guy. It's amazing." And I just said that's the coolest video ever.
Brilliant. And
then you can't not have Harry Metcalf in there.
Yeah. Yeah, Harry's Garage is an amazing little series that he's now created.
It is, and I was very lucky this year. I went to Dakar with Audi and spent 3 days with Harry because it was me, him, and Joe on the trip, and Paul Woodman from Love Cars, and such a lovely, lovely guy. But he's just a mountain of knowledge. He knows so much. And his videos, they're not the best produced in the world, but they're packed full of stuff people want to know.
He did a great little video in the summer where he just drove over to Clarkson's farm and they just compared their Range Rovers.
Oh, it went viral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cracking little video.
I know.
And I love the thought. He was probably like, do you know what? I think I'll drive over to Clarkson's today and just go and chat about the car sat on the tailgate.
Yeah, I mean, what he did one a couple of weeks ago, he had an Aston Martin DBX 707 and just towed a horse box around his farm in it on a field. But no, he's a so those three, I think, it's difficult to get any better than that.
If you had to invite one Top Gear presenter of any era of Top Gear to a dinner date, who would it be?
How you doing? It'd probably be
Joey
from Friends. Yeah, Matt LeBlanc. Probably Matt LeBlanc or Chris Harris, I think. But yeah, I think Matt LeBlanc would be funny. He'd have some stories.
Yes. Yeah.
But it wouldn't be Hammond Coxon and me.
Best potato format.
Oh my God. Dauphinois.
So a mate of mine who I often accuse of being very middle class.
Yeah.
And he once said Dauphinois, and I said, "How on earth can you choose Dauphinois?" Like, that's the best one, is it?
Oh yeah.
Better than roasties.
Well, roasties are great, but Dauphinois potatoes are
Better than chips.
Yeah, well, I see now. Yeah, the crisps, they're all in there. No, I said it because I thought it might get a reaction. But roast potatoes, you can't beat roasty. But yeah,
Brilliant. And then one meal for the rest of your life. What would that be?
Oh, steak and chips.
Yeah,
Really
good,
nice ribeye.
good potatoes they are.
Yeah, really nice ribeye. Dauphinois. Yeah, a nice ribeye with some frites and béarnaise sauce. And a nice big flat mushroom.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Get me hungry now.
I think we're not far off lunchtime, so I think that's a good place to call it. Thank you very much for spending the time to speak to me and then inviting me to your home as well.
Ah, my place, great. It's just great talk. It's a great excuse to talk cars and bikes,
isn't it? Just, yeah. I think a podcast is a good excuse to just have a nice chat. So yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks.
My pleasure, mate.